Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thank you so much for joining me at the History Center here today. My name is Callie Turner, and I am the Curator of Education here. And I'd like to welcome everyone joining us here in person, and also those of you who are joining us online. Hello. Just so you know, I will leave some time at the end for questions. So if you're in person, on the tables, there are some little sticky notes and a pencil, so you'll just write your question on there, and someone will come around and pick it up. And if you are in the live chat, you can just put those in the chat function, and Cheyenne will read them out to me at the end. Well, like I said, welcome to Lunch and Learn. Today we're going to be talking about the Dazzling, Defunct Circus World theme park. Before I get started, did anyone go to Circus World in this room? Okay. Did anyone work at Circus World in this room? Okay. I knew I had some people coming. Well, I'm so glad you're here, and if you had been before, I hope that you enjoy this kind of trail down memory lane, and if you've never been before, like myself, we can kind of learn about it together and see what made Circus World so special. So just to give a little bit of my background, the reason I decided to do this is because I used to live in Sarasota, and I used to work at the John and Mabel Ringling Museum of Art. So I had all of this circus knowledge when I moved here, and had nothing to do with the knowledge anymore. So when Cheyenne asked if I wanted to do a lunch and learn, I Googled circus in Central Florida, and found out about Circus World and immediately fell in love with it. So that's why I'm doing this today. But before we get started, I have a question for you, and I'll probably have other questions for you throughout, so please feel free to just say things out loud. When you go to a theme park, what do you want out of that experience? Why do you go to a theme park? There's no wrong answers. This is just opinions. Anyone?
It's supposed to be relaxed. It doesn't work that way, but to relax and get away. But
Okay, so for our online people, I'll just repeat what you said. So it's supposed to be like a relaxing vacation, but it never is that way. Absolutely. Anyone else? For entertainment. You want to be entertained. Someone said fun. Anyone else? Do you go for the rides? Do you go for the shows? Do you go to meet your favorite characters? Anybody?
Spend time with my out-of-town relatives.
Ah, yes, that is what you do if you live in Orlando, is you take your relatives to the theme parks. Absolutely. Well, we are going to see all of those things, maybe why it could have been stressful if you wanted a relaxing vacation. We're going to see how they entertained people, how people had fun there, and why you should have taken your out-of-town relatives there maybe. So first, I just want to give some background information on the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. So everyone is familiar with the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. So back in the day, the circus used to come to town, and it was like a holiday. People would take off school, they would take off work, the train would come in, they would unload, they would set up the big top tent, and it was a big deal. They would be there for a week or so, sometimes a few days, but either way, this was a huge deal to have the circus come to town. Well, after a while, the circus wasn't really coming to town anymore. There weren't places for you to set up a giant big top for a few days and then take it all down and get back on the train. They needed somewhere permanent to host the circus. So, at this point, the Feld Entertainment owned the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. And Irving Feld had the idea to create a permanent home for the circus in Haines City, Florida. So here he would open a theme park, but he would also do some other things like move the Clown College, have it be the home base for the winter season. But, if they're moving towards arena shows, you can't really jump on the train and go to the circus anymore. Why not have a permanent place? And these are just some posters from the theme park, just so you can get kind of that old world circus feel of the old circus posters that they would put up in town. But why in the world did Irving Feld pick Haines City, Florida? Anybody have any guesses? Why would you want to move the circus to Haines City, Florida? I-4 and Highway 27. That's exactly right. So on the southeast corner of where I-4 and US 27 are, that is where he built Circus World as well. Also, of course, the weather, right? It's nice, warm weather year round. The same reason they all moved down here. But part of the idea was, yes, this is the theme park place to be, and we're only 10 minutes from Disney, and that may or may not have worked in their favor. We'll see a little bit later. Oh, wait, I actually have a funny story. So Ron Severini, I talked to him on the phone. He was the director of the Clown College. He sent me some of these pictures, and he told me that one time he was driving to work. He was driving into Circus World, and he was pulled over right in front of this sign here, and he was telling the cop, like, I'm on my way to work, and I'm in clown makeup. So instead of getting a ticket, he just gave the cop his autograph. So I thought that was a silly story. I hope he doesn't mind me sharing, but... All right. So in 1973, they break ground in Haines City. You can see one of the pictures in the top corner there with the elephant. That is the renowned Ringling clown, Lou Jacobs. He's one of the most recognizable clowns. When you think of a clown, it's probably his face. And he was a circus clown for over 60 years. So he's over there pushing an elephant, getting him ready to go on the road. And we also have some before pictures, again, from Mr. Severini of what it would have looked like as they were building that big top, that permanent big top. It's not a tent, it's an actual building painted to look like it. And then in the middle picture, we have some of the staff and the crew and some of the circus folk at the ribbon cutting. So before the circus theme park actually opened, they opened the Circus World Showcase in 1974. So it was meant to be a preview for the real theme park, get people excited, make them want to come. So it had a couple of interesting elements that we'll talk about later maybe, but it had a big theater, a giant IMAX theater that would kind of show you what was going to be going on, but also make you feel like you're in the circus. It was about 25,000 square feet. And the admission was pretty cheap. You can see there, for adults, it was $1.95 and 95 cents for children 6 to 12. So today, if the math is correct, that would be about equivalent to $13 for adults and about $6 for children. Talk about affordable prices. Nowadays, you go to Disney for a day, you're paying $100 if not more. So one of the special things that Feld made sure he wanted to explain to people was that this one ticket gets you into everything. And that was kind of special because I don't know if you're familiar with the Disney parks history and how their tickets used to work, but you would have to buy these specific like ride tickets. And the more things you wanted to do, the more you had to pay. So the fact that he was like, you come in, you pay $1.95, and you get it all. That's a really, really good deal. Absolutely real deal. But I found this article in the Ledger about the opening of the Circus Showcase, and I wanted to go through a couple of the things that Feld said will happen, and then as we go through the PowerPoint, we will see if those things ever came to fruition. So he said it's going to open in 1976. He said it'll cost about $50 million. It'll handle about 100,000 people, and it will be the largest capacity attraction in the United States. He also said they would have 4 circus shows daily. They would have a wild animal safari, kind of, where animals could just roam free. And then the big thing that I feel like everyone kind of talks about is the 19-story Elephant Hotel. So he said it would have 400 rooms, clown bellboys, the legs would be elevators. This was going to be the showstopper of Circus World. This is going to be a hotel you've never seen before. This was the best picture I could find of any kind of rendering of what the hotel was going to look like because, spoiler alert, there was no Elephant Hotel, sadly. But you can kind of see it has this beautiful decoration all over it. And at night, the jewels were going to light up and kind of create these beautiful spectrum of rainbow colors all across Circus World. He was so sure that they were going to make this hotel that he actually had some hotel designers go and measure the skeleton of Jumbo the elephant, P.T. Barnum's prized elephant, just to make sure that it would be structurally correct to be like what an elephant is like. And he purchased that for $10,000 back in 1881. So he's putting his money on the line for this hotel that never happened. He also said he was going to move the base operation from Sarasota, including the Clown College and the Circus Museum. And I don't know if you remember what I said a few minutes ago, but I used to work at the museum in Sarasota, so another spoiler alert, that didn't happen either. He said that the college would have daily classes where people could come learn how to do different circus things, and they would also put on clown makeup for you so you could become a clown yourself. And while we're kind of looking at this article, I want to point out something in the corner. There's an interesting headline. This, again, is the article from when they opened Showcase. It says, Circus World sale still on. Well, that's not good news. If you are already in the newspaper because you're going on sale and you just opened today, we're off on the wrong foot already. So the theme park and the circus itself, the name, were sold to many different people, and it gets a little bit confusing. So originally, like I said, Feld Entertainment, they owned both the circus name and the theme park. Then Mattel, in 1982, they had it for a very short period of time, about a year. Mattel, like the Barbie toy company, they owned the name and the theme park. And then they gave the name back to Feld Entertainment, and the park went to a man named Jim Monaghan, which we'll talk about later. And then finally, it went to Harcourt, the publishing company, which I will probably refer to as HBJ in the future, mostly because I cannot say Jovanovich. Yes. So yes, a publishing company were the last people with their hands on the circus, which is very strange if you ask me. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But they had also just bought in 1986 SeaWorld and Cypress Gardens. So they were also part of this business of, well, if everybody else is opening an amusement park, let's get our hands on them too. So in 1976 is when Feld said the original park would really open. And here we have a Circus World map from 1976. You could see quite a few things at that point. You could see craftsmen work on circus wagons and harnesses. You could ride an elephant or ride a wagon pulled by a camel. You could go around the carousel. You could eat a Barnum Blueberry muffin at the cookhouse. But we are missing some star players on this map. If this is supposed to be when it was opening, there's not really any wild and free animals. There is the elephant barn that we'll talk about later. There's no elephant hotel, like I said, pretty sad. But in 1976, it is not looking like the largest capacity circus in the country at this point. So as it's switching hands and doing things like that, we're going to skip forward to when we really start seeing the circus world. So we'll use this map to kind of guide us through our presentation. So we're skipping forward to the 1980s at this point when they started bringing in roller coasters and shows and animals and games and most importantly, some money to all of those things. So for those of us who were not able to go to the circus, the Circus World, I thought this would be the best way to go through it. We are going to go through this map as if we are actually going into Circus World. Also, side note, they did drop the showcase part at some point, but I could not figure out for the life of me when they actually got rid of that. So from now on, it's just Circus World, not Circus World Showcase. But let's see. Of course, if you're coming to Circus World, the first place you're going to stop, I have a little star on our map there, is the Big Top. So the Big Top is the signature thing of when you think of circus, you think of the big top. That's where you're going to go see the shows. So they wanted you to step right up to an old-timey ticket wagon to purchase your admission, and then as you walk into the park and you see the big top, that's going to get you in the right headspace, right? You're going to feel like you are at the circus. You're not just at a theme park. Inside the Big Top Circus, there were quite a few things. There was the Spectacular Illusion Circus. There was the Model Circus Showcase. There were restaurants. There were gift shops. And something that I mentioned earlier, it had a giant IMAX theater, a 6-story IMAX theater. It was so real feeling. Apparently it would make people motion sick when they would sit and watch it. But it was the largest IMAX theater in the world at the time. And it would show different points of view to make you feel like you were in the circus. You're not just watching the circus. You're the one who's training the animals, or you're the one who's walking the tightrope. And there's a quote from the press release that says, "It wasn't like watching the circus, it's like being in the circus." And that is kind of my whole entire theme for today, is that this is not just watching the circus, it's being a part of the circus itself. So, after we go through the big top, we're just going to walk up a little bit farther and make it to the absolutely gorgeous carousel that would have been in the middle. So this carousel was hand-carved by craftsmen, and each horse was lacquered 37 times each. It was originally constructed in 1929 by Marcus Charles Alliance. He's a big carousel maker, if you didn't know. But this carousel was originally in Coney Island and then purchased by Circus World and restored. So his style was known because of the flamboyant horses that were decked out with jewels and gold and silver leaf. So these are not the best pictures to show off the horses themselves, I know. But it does show something else very special that you could do at the circus. So as you can see, all the people in these pictures have their face painted like a clown, right? So that's where we're going to go next, is to the wonderful world of clowns. So at the wonderful world of clowns, you could get your face painted by a professional and, again, become a part of the circus. And at the end, you could actually buy a little button with your face on it, face painted. And thank you to all of the people that I talked to about this who then sent me their pictures of them on their buttons. They were adorable, but I did not want to put anyone on the screen that way. But I got so many button pictures, and they're so cute. And something interesting that I found out when I was talking to Ron Severini, who was the director of the Clown College, he told me that he brought up the idea to Feld, and this was kind of the first time they really had face painting at a theme park. Now you think you go to Disney or wherever, you can get your face painted. Back then that wasn't really a thing. So he said he feels like he is the uncredited creator of face paint. And I also just want to give a little bit of background. Clown makeup is a lot more than meets the eye. It is very special to the clowns who wear it. Clowns can actually copyright their makeup. You do so by putting it on these ceramic eggs, and you then retire your makeup. And it's so no two clowns would have the same face. So again, they're taking something that's very important and very special to them as circus performers, and they're giving it to you. That's a pretty big deal. Even along with the fact that nobody else had really done that before. But I found these absolutely adorable pictures where you could go in and get your face painted. And like I said, at the end, you could get a little button as well. All right, moving on up. After we've ridden the carousel and we've got our face painted, I think, we've been walking around a lot. It's not so relaxing anymore. Maybe we need to sit down and watch some shows. And there were a lot of circus shows at Circus World. They had the Circus Spectacular in the pavilion, they had the Circus in the Round, they had the Sideshow Circus, they had the Clown Circus, and that's not even including all of the parades. At one point, some of the performers were doing up to 9 shows a day. That has to be exhausting. And these pictures are not all from necessarily the same circus show. There were just so many that I could only pick a couple to give you an idea of what you would see if you wanted to go to a show. So some are pretty traditional things that you think of. We have some folks doing some acrobatics here. We have someone on a wagon. Of course, circus wagons are a really big deal. And we even have someone breathing fire over here if you were more of a daredevil and wanted to see that. But whatever part of the circus that you enjoyed, there was a show for you at Circus World. All right, and now we've gotten our face painted, we've sat down and gotten some relaxation. Now it's time to do something absolutely amazing. It's time to get up off of our feet, and it's time to be a star of the circus ourselves. So this was known as the Be a Star Circus or the Participation Circus, and it would let you learn how to do circus acts like juggling, but also learn how to walk the high wire. So these pictures here, you can see our actual guests who would have come and been able to walk the tightrope, the high wire. They are harnessed and everything, and you can see there's some folks down at the bottom making sure you're okay, but it was pretty high up. I do not know if I would have had the guts to do it. By show of hands, who thinks they'd give it a shot? They'd try the tightrope. Cheyenne, 1, 2, 3. Okay, we have some daredevils in here. All right, well, if you're not willing to walk the tightrope, I don't know how you're going to like these roller coasters, okay? But again, this was so special. You couldn't do this anywhere else. If you were not a trained tightrope walker, how are you ever going to get to do this in your life? This is what made it so special, right? Again, they're making you a part of the circus. You're not just watching it. So, all right. After we have all scared ourselves to death and walked the tightrope or watched our loved ones in fear walk the tightrope, we'll head up back in the corner here to do something a little more family friendly if you're not quite a fan of heights. You can get your exercise in another way. They did have a midway with carnival games that you can see here. They had like the ones where you could toss the ball and try to get it in the little bowl, and you could win your data prize. Like you see this gentleman up here, you could win him a stuffed animal. They had the ring toss, the 3 in a row. They also had this lovely parachute ride. So trying to, again, keep you in that mindset of the circus, no matter where you're going, where you're walking, what you're doing, there is something to do, no matter where in the park you are. So now, this is the thing that I feel like everyone thinks of when they talk to me about Circus World. And that is the absolutely cuckoo bananas rides that they had at this place. So I can't cover all of them, but I can cover a few. So the steel coaster, which was first built in Circus World at Circus World in 1977, was the Zoomerang, also known as the Flying Daredevil. That is the one that you see with the vertical loop-de-loop up there. You do a full 360 going on that one. So if you are a fan of high-flying thrills, the Flying Daredevil was the place for you. Below that, we have the center wheel, which, when you first glance at it, looks like a Ferris wheel, but it is not. Your car doesn't necessarily move like when you go around a Ferris wheel, right? It stays the right way around. This one would take you all the way upside down again. So I hope you took your Dramamine before you got on this ride. And then finally, I also have the Ranger, which was a ship that rotated or swung back and forth and rotated a little bit. That one was not at the park for the whole time, but I still wanted to include it anyway. But the big one, was the Roaring Tiger. So it cost about $2.3 million to construct, and it used over 500,000 feet of lumber to create this wooden coaster. Originally, it could get up to 60 miles an hour, and it was known as the South's longest and fastest roller coaster. You might notice a celebrity up in the top right corner riding the roller coaster. Anybody tell who that is? It's Michael Jackson, yeah. So apparently Michael Jackson loved the Roaring Tiger coaster, and he would come down here and bring his guests and give it a ride. They actually very briefly named it after him and called it Michael Jackson's Thrill Coaster, because of Thriller. But later, spoiler alert, when the park became Boardwalk and Baseball, it was called the Florida Hurricane, and it now lives as the Arkansas Twister at Magic Springs in Arkansas, which that was something I never really thought about before I started looking into this, is that they will just move roller coasters to another park. I don't know, I guess you've never really thought about that, but there are a lot of rides that were here that you can still ride today if you're willing to go to Arkansas or Mexico to do so. They might be rethemed, of course, and renamed, but you still get those same thrills. All right, so we've done our roller coasters. I'm stressed out again. I need time to sit down. So, if you were not a roller coaster fan, you could still be excited in other ways. They had a ton, and I mean a ton of animal shows. They had the exotic animal circus, the world's largest elephant barn. You could ride an elephant at the elephant walk. They had a menagerie with llamas and giraffes and a baby animal circus. But there was one that really stuck out to me that I thought, why in the world would you have this circus animal in Florida? And that is the Arctic Circus with polar bears. So the History Center isn't the only place to find polar bears in Florida. Apparently, you could also see them at Circus World. There were two pretty famous polar bears there who came from the Kansas City Zoo, known as Esky and Mo. And you can see their trainer here with them, Ursula. She's a famous female animal trainer in the late 20th century. And just a fun fact about her, besides the fact that she was very good at what she does, her name was Ursula, and Ursus means bear in Latin. So it was kind of predestined for her to be a polar bear trainer, perhaps. So there is much, 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 much more to Circus World, as you can see, just because of the map. There's the Aqua Circus. We didn't even talk about the conservation and the research area. We didn't talk about the restaurants or anything, the merchandise, because there's just so much to Circus World. So I apologize if I didn't get to your favorite part of Circus World, but you can tell me about it at the end. I want to jump ahead in time a little bit to May 10th, 1986, and I have a little video here that's going to explain what happened on that day.
Well, the circus has come to town and has left. One of Orlando's attractions is closing down after being a landmark for more than 10 years. Circus World has been sold, and there will be a whole new show in town. News Center 2's Ed McDonough has the story.
This sign on Interstate 4 tells it all. Circus World, open since 1974, is history. The closing came at 4 o'clock this morning when the Harcourt Brace Yovanovich Company bought the theme park for $18 million.
Good morning. How are you today?
Fine, thank you.
Circus World is closed.
The turnstiles at Circus World never turned as much as the owners hoped they would. Even though the park had a good location near the intersection of Interstate 4 and Highway 27 in Polk County, attendance was never up to par. As a result, the park had several owners over the years, including the Mattel Toy Company. The last owner was Jim Monahan. HBJ will spend $7 million renovating the park. It'll reopen in December as an attraction called Boardwalk and Baseball. The roller coaster and other rides will stay, but the circus theme and shows will go.
So, you did hear that correctly. When they bought Circus World, everyone had no idea. The performers showed up to work, guests showed up to enjoy the amusement park. Stop that. but all just to be told that the park is closing. So roughly 250 employees were suddenly put on the spot. Some of them were transferred to other HBJ parks like SeaWorld and Cypress Gardens. Some were just kind of waiting around until the new park opened, and others were just straight up out of luck. And this all happened seemingly overnight. And like it showed in the video, they had people outside just telling the cars that were coming in, sorry, we're closed. And Circus World was gone to make room for a new theme park, Boardwalk and Baseball. And like they said in the video, the rides and everything for the most part were the same. They just took away the theme of circus, renamed the rides, and of course they took away the shows. So, come on, there we go. So here's a little brochure from Boardwalk and Baseball, so you can see that coaster that we saw before, but now it's got a little bit of different color scheme to it. I forgot what I was going to say now. Oh, it didn't last very long. That's what I was going to say. Unfortunately, it also didn't last very long. It opened in 1987 and then closed in 1990. So it was only around for about 3 years. Perhaps this just was not the spot to have an amusement park. So the question is, what is it now? What exciting thing sits where these grand amusement parks once stood? Posner Park, a strip mall. So, yes, Circus World and Boardwalk and Baseball had a pretty tragic end. Now, you would have no idea that these incredible places were once here. There's a Target, a JCPenney, there's a PetSmart, but there's no polar bears there, so what's the point? Overall, it's just kind of sad that you can go over there and there's nothing there anymore. So I guess the final question I kind of want to go over is what exactly brought on this demise? Because as we're sitting here and you're learning about all these roller coasters and looking at all the shows and all of the people who worked there, why would everyone not be lining up to go? That's my thought. This is one of the most amazing things I've ever heard. It might be the greatest theme park on earth. Well, there are a couple of things that I've heard from reading different opinions online and also talking to some former employees. There are a couple of theories, and maybe it's kind of all of them combined. One is that it was too close to Disney, but also not close enough. So being just a few minutes away from Disney, good, because hopefully people will just ride on down I-4 and come and visit you in 10 minutes. But Epcot opened in 1982, and so people could spend 3 of their, usually 4-day vacations at Walt Disney World now. And their 4th day, they would go to Cypress Gardens or SeaWorld. People were just not making that little tiny trip over there when they could go somewhere else. Another one is that in 1973, there was the oil embargo and there was a gas shortage. And overall, people were just not as willing to get in their cars and drive to a theme park. Especially if you were going to Disney, you're not going to waste that extra gas to go to Circus World. Another thing that I heard was that the shows just didn't change up enough. It was just kind of the same thing every time you went. I don't know how true that is. But the shows are pretty amazing. So I feel like if I saw this more than once, I would still be entertained. But finally, just having that many live performers is so expensive. And I can imagine, well, maybe not because it was the 70s and 80s, but there was probably a lot of insurance going on when you were letting people walk tightropes. But overall, it was just too expensive, and they were not getting the attendance to make that money back that they were spending on roller coasters and rides and shows and performers and animals, and all of that was, it was just too expensive to keep up, unfortunately. And finally, the most important question that I wanted to find the answer to was what made Circus World so special? And what I discovered is kind of cheesy, so I'm asking you to bear with me for a second. It's hard to explain if you're not in it, and maybe some of the folks who used to work in the circus can agree with this, but the circus is like a family. And even when I was working at the Ringling Museum, I got to experience some of that through the people that I met there. Some who also worked at the circus. I used to work with Peggy Williams, the first woman to graduate from Ringling Clown College. And these people who work at the circus are just unlike any other. And their bond is incredible, and it lasts even now. So when you were at Circus World, they were letting you into that special family that they created. And that's just something that you don't get when you go to any other theme park. When you go to Disney, you're at Disney, right? But you're not in the Disney family. You don't feel like you're one of the performers, right? You're watching it happen in front of you, and it's marvelous. But it's not the same as getting to be let in, right? Seeing behind those closed doors. And I experienced some of this just by researching for this lecture. One of our historical actors who does our field trips, he led me to Ron Severini, who then led me to another employee, who then got me in contact with someone else who used to work there. And then he told me about this Facebook group for all of the people who used to work there and who loved it. And they do reunions. And, hey, do you know this person? And do you know that person? And all of a sudden, I had so many people and no time to call them all, because every single person was like, this person would love to talk to you about Circus World. That's what everyone said. And like even John over here, he brought in his collection for me to see, and we talked for almost 2 hours. People just love it, and they want to share it with you. And I just think that is so special. So, as cheesy as it sounds, I think at the end of the day, what made Circus World so special were the people who made the circus happen, right? You're not getting that anywhere else. So we can kind of keep watching this video in the background for now. It's just a video I found online of some different things you could do at Circus World, and it's pretty neat. But before I completely wrap up, any questions? If you wrote them on the sticky note, Cheyenne is coming around. Okay. Yes. So this question is, oh, I like this question. If you could go back in time and visit Circus World, what would you want to do the most? As terrifying as it seems, I think I would want to learn how to walk a tightrope. At the Ringling Museum, there's one that's like on the ground for little kids to do, and even that was kind of scary, so I'd really like to give it a shot. Does anyone else have something that really stood out to them that you would want to do? I might also want to ride a roller coaster with Michael Jackson. That would be a really cool story to tell people. Yeah, back in the day, I used to ride roller coasters with Michael Jackson. All right. Next question from in person is, what happened to the polar bears? That is a great question, and I went down a rabbit hole. There are websites where you can go and find out where every animal that has ever been in a circus or a zoo or whatever, and where they went, how long they lived, how they died, where they died, etc. The polar bears, I'm trying to think. I don't specifically remember what happened to Esky and Mo, but they were moved to another theme park. They might have gone back to Kansas City. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I promise you, if you Google the polar bears, you will go down a rabbit hole of where they all went. So I'm sorry I don't remember exactly, but they found a new home in another theme park. Thank you all for joining me today with my Lunch and Learn.